Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome a man who, I thought he was in New York, but he's actually now in Miami. So he's gone south, but for those of you who are in Australia, it means he's going warmer. So this is a fireside chat, but there's no fireside chats in Miami because there's no fireplaces in Miami because it's too warm. Mr. Mitch Sapoff, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Darren.
I love that. And hey, we had a bit of a chat yesterday, and you sound like a pretty cool dude. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. You are the founder and CEO of RevSignals.io, and sales leader, sales professional, and I call you based on our conversation yesterday an exceptional sales leader, and I'll explain why to the listeners. And that is, I remember you telling me yesterday that you had people listening to your calls when you were selling. And one particular person said, I just love listening to your calls of what you do. And you said, yeah, I think you said, well, why? That's cool, but why? So it was obviously something that you did or that you do that was really attractive. So that's the basis for the conversation today, to try to unlock some of the tips and tricks and techniques that great salespeople use that perhaps are intangible for many, but if we actually tap into them, we can try to use that as a bit of a system moving forward. So, with that said, your background. I always love to delve into a little bit of the guest background in terms of where it all started, and what has led you now to run a very successful business in terms of Rev Signals.
Yeah, man, where it all started. It all started in 2018 when I first learned about the high ticket sales industry, the remote closing industry, right? I had a little bit of sales experience before, but this got me excited because I'm hearing short sales cycles, higher velocity, and the ability to get onto a call and within 30, 45 minutes with a complete stranger, convince them to give you their credit card number, right? So that was all really interesting and exciting for me.
Yeah.
And so I learned the trade real fast, and then I started selling on some of these high ticket info offers, um, offers teaching you how to create your own Amazon business, offers teaching busy professionals how to get into flow state on demand, right? All these different coaching programs and even done for you services that ran this sort of high ticket funnel, right? Where
Hmm.
people saw an ad, they booked a call, and then they get on a call with a sales professional. And the objective is to actually collect payment either on that call or maybe on the follow-up call. Right. And so I was really into this world of short sales cycle, high ticket sales, inbound closing, remote closing. And then eventually I got good enough where people started listening to my calls and trying to model their sales scripts and their sales processes after me and asking me to hop on role plays with them and trainings. And I said, what if I start charging money for this? And so I started a coaching program called Rapid Closer. This was in 2021. And we ended up training over 300 sales reps on remote closing and how to do these one or two call closes for these done with you or done for you services and online products. And it was very successful. We ended up placing these reps in 7 and 8 figure businesses that many people have even heard of before. And some of these reps even went on to go start their own businesses or sell in completely different industries and make 10, 20, 30, 50, 100K per month off of sales. And
Mm.
that's really cool. And so after that, I said, how can I do this on an even bigger level? And I started working with different businesses, both SMEs and enterprise as well, to help them dial in how they talk to their customer.
Mm.
And the result of that is one of the sales teams that I work with and ended up scaling to 1 million a month in less than 9 months. And then another sales team, enterprise sales team that I worked with ended up doubling their lead to close rate, right? In the applications that we handled. So the work works. And these days, I am doing sprints with businesses to help them do the same.
Nice, nice. I love that. And it kind of, and I'll say this really respectfully, it kind of flies in the face of a lot of B2B businesses where sometimes the sales cycles are quite long.
Yep.
And there's research that suggests that often clients need to have some sort of contact with organizations between 5 and 12 and sometimes 18 to 20 times before
Yeah.
they're ready to make a purchasing decision. In the
Right.
work that you do, what part of, I guess, the funnel, the end-to-end customer life cycle do you typically come into? Because everything you do, because one thing it's to sell great and to close good numbers. The other thing is to retain those customers. So everything we talk about here, and I'm sure you're the same, is we provide ethical solutions. We don't sell stuff to people that don't want it, but we're going to do it anyway because we're going to use the sleazy, dodgy 1970s used car salesman tactics.
Of
So,
course not.
can you just talk a little bit about then the market that you fit into? Because there'll be people listening to this and saying, "Oh my God, I've got a sales cycle that's like 12 months," and his close. He's talking about closing on the second call or on the first call.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So if your sales cycle is 12 months, by working with me, you're not going to automatically shorten that to one or two calls, right? With that said, there's always an opportunity to shorten sales cycle, and it comes down to understanding what the actual either existing objections are or potential objections that they might have. Because if
Mm,
you can understand those, then without being pushy, without demanding that someone hand over payment on the call that you're having with them, you can go and handle those objections, make sure that they're listening, send them supporting info that handles those objections, and then they're going to come back to you faster,
mm.
right? So that is how I look at shortening sales cycles, no matter if your sales cycle is 3 calls or 3 years.
Yeah, okay. And then working in with whether it be you as your business or you individually coaching enterprises and businesses. How closely do you therefore have to work in with maybe the founder of the business if you're working for a founder startup or the chief marketing officer of an organization where you're coming in the middle of a life cycle,
Yeah.
but the role of the marketing department is to create the interest that people put their hand up and say, "Hey, I want to investigate this," and that's where you come in and shorten the sales cycle. So how important is it for you to, I guess, work in with the marketing teams and all the founders to make sure that when you are talking with your customers or potential customers, they're ready to make that purchasing decision?
Yeah, it's really important, but it definitely varies in the type of business that I'm working with, right? So if I'm working with a founder, the goal is to be able to extract all the conviction that they have or had back when they were taking the sales calls for the business themselves, and essentially catch all of the things that they unconsciously did that got them the deals, and
Mm,
be able to work that into the system that the rest of the team follows. That's extremely important. Now, when you're working with a larger enterprise, it's extremely, again, important to interface with someone that is high up in marketing, because we want to make sure that the sales conversations are aligned with the marketing message, right? Because the more congruent everything is, the more trust the buyer feels, the more likely they are to
mm.
buy. But you'll be surprised how many larger companies don't have a good middle of funnel in place, where they'll just hit their customers up with like random emails here and there without any like engagement. And then
Yeah.
they wonder why their close rates suck.
Well, they probably think, Mitch, that their product just sells itself. So why wouldn't customers fall over themselves to just lean in and buy their product or their service?
I mean, listen, it's like they do get the sales that they get because of the fact that the product sells itself, but then they're competing with another great product that sells itself, and they have their marketing and sales dialed in where they're following up, they're engaging, they're making the buyer feel like they are part of an experience versus just, all right, thanks for filling out this application, we'll get back to you.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to talk about there is often organizations think that because a prospective client either downloaded a free report, a free chapter of a book, or jumped on a website and made some sort of inquiry, that equals a lead. And therefore, they get the sales team to, hey, go and go and close this because this customer is obviously interested.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about middle of the funnel strategies and tactics, what have you seen work really well? And it doesn't have to be rocket science because it just has to, as you said, just has to be aligned with customers' problem pain points and the potential solution, the language we're speaking.
Yeah, for sure. So it's two main pieces. So like lately, there's been these technologies that are coming out and about where you can send blue iMessages to your prospects from your business, right? So those obviously feel a lot more personalized because you can engineer the tech to be like for it to actually feel like it's coming from a real person instead of an automated machine. So that's been
Hmm.
working really well from what I've seen. And then the other piece is like making sure that you have like very simple educational content that your prospect can binge watch, right? To essentially get warmed up for by the time that it's time for their sales call, right? So those two
Mm.
things in tandem I think work really well.
Yeah, love it. So let's then talk about, I guess, the reps because the interesting thing is where, well, talk about reps. What's your positioning or your thoughts on AI? Because there's a lot of people I do talk to that are integrating AI into their business and particularly their sales practices.
Yeah.
Um, what sort of role do you think AI plays? And I guess the human versus technology or the human and technology integration piece. Have you got a view on that?
Yeah. So, Darren, you're talking to the guy that was one of the first to the AI voice agents party, like in
Okay.
2020, and I no longer use the AI voice agents.
Oh,
So I'm not saying that they're bad. There's plenty, not plenty, but there's some companies that do a really good job of building great AI voice agents, and there's a good amount of industries and businesses where they work really well. In the industry that I mostly sit in and operate in, it's a little bit more high touch, and I find that just having a human voice works a lot better. With that said, the best applications that I've seen for AI in 2026 is going to be for admin related stuff and sales management, right? So doing things like call reviews and KPI tracking. Like personally, I don't think that salespeople should be bothered with like logging their stats because that uses a completely different part of their brain that
mm,
then drains the part of their brain that is good for sales calls. You know what I mean? In fact, personally, I don't even like when a rep handles the full cycle, so to speak, because again, they're using different parts of their brain and they're not really able to specialize.
yeah.
So again, unpopular opinion, but that's how I look at segmentation and how I look at the role in AI with sales.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've seen a few sales teams that have used AI probably to the extreme
Yeah.
where they've literally put customer requirements or what they think are customer requirements into an AI engine, says, create me a proposal,
Mhm.
including a maybe an implementation plan, but also an executive summary. And they deliver that as the proposal. They don't necessarily check it to validate it to make it sound or make sure it sounds like them.
Yeah.
And at some point in the sales cycle and the buying cycle, they've got to stand in front of the customer or have a call like this and explain their proposal. And
Yeah.
when they give it all over to AI and some simple questions are asked from the customer, it's quickly established that, hey, this is not your work because you cannot explain it. So
Yeah.
it needs to be accompanying what we're doing. It's not about replacing the human is my view.
Exactly. And you know, like I will say this, I would treat it just like someone that I'd be hiring to help me with these proposals. Like the first 10, 15, 20 proposals, I am checking that thing twice, right? And making sure that it's done to the standard that, well, at least to 80% of what I would have done it. And if it's saving me a ton of time and it's still converting, great, right?
Mm.
And then only from there am I trusting it to actually do the work without me checking it. But then again, why am I showing up to the sales call unprepared, right? And trying to piece together information from the AI. I will say this though, it's very characteristic of certain types of sales personalities because they're kind of like the wing it on the spot, improvise sort of guys and gals where they're like, yeah, I'll just figure it out on the call. But when you have a complex sale with a complex sales cycle and you're selling a complex product, doesn't work so well.
No, and you
Uh,
can very quickly get exposed as not genuine, disingenuous, lacking integrity, and that diminishes trust. And the question mark then becomes, if this is the experience I'm having through the early phases of maybe exploration discovery, then if we do business with this organization, what other surprises will be presented to us?
bingo,
Yeah,
bingo.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so while we stay on the world of AI, because I do want to talk about I guess the concept of what you have done in terms of analyzing calls and extracting specific strategies. You
Yep.
mentioned that AI is a great tool for sales managers, and when it comes to things like reviewing calls, analyzing specific things for coaching, where have you
Yep.
seen it work well in that realm? Because from my own experience as a sales manager, and my sales teams weren't necessarily based on phone calls, so it was more face to face. I always
Yep.
found it difficult to be fully present with the meeting, the customer conversation with my account manager, but then try to understand, okay, what is my account manager doing? What's happening with their voice inflection? Are they saying the right thing? Did they miss an opportunity? So, how have you seen AI work well from a coaching perspective as a sales manager? Because really, that's what we're talking about to become exceptional. You've got to understand what's working and what's not, so we can continue to improve.
Yeah. AI is going to tell you the what, but it's not going to tell you the why. And here's what I mean. AI can tell you uh, when and where a rep missed a line in the script or it missed an objection handle.
Yep.
But you, as a sales leader, have to then go in and listen to that exact part of the call. And now you have to look at what's going on within the salesperson that made them miss it. And then
Mm.
you still got to hop onto the session with them to be like, dude, what the fuck? Right?
Yep.
Like, right? Like what happened? You know?
Yep.
And so and so I think that AI is really good at freeing up sales managers or sales leaders time for the human stuff that really needs a human. And
Mm.
that's with like making sure that they're empowering their team and their salespeople and helping them unblock things that are stopping them from achieving certain sales targets or certain personal goals, etc.
And I think you hit it on the head there with the what versus the why. So if we identify that a salesperson missed an opportunity, it would
Yeah,
be very easy for us as a sales leader to say, "Hey, you missed the opportunity. What should have you done instead?" And it becomes a very much a directional type conversation versus, "Okay, there was an opportunity that missed, or we didn't quite identify an objection, or there was an opportunity to actually do an assumptive close." The question then is, just tell me what was happening just before that. What was happening in your mind? How were you thinking? How were you feeling? What
yeah,
prompted you to then take that form of action? So going deep, and that's what AI can't do because it's not cognitive yet.
exactly. It's knowledge versus behavior, right? Because I mean, how many times like have you heard the statement of like you know exactly what to do, but you still don't do it, right? And so AI can't tell you why you don't do it.
Yeah.
That's human to human conversation. And see, I think that AI is going to do a great job of really shortlisting the sales leaders that have that ability to read between the lines and to to really call on their reps to level up in terms of identity, right?
Mm.
I really think that that's the next evolution of sales leadership.
And that might actually help sales leaders identify the key characteristics of the individual. And when I say characteristics, behavior styles, personality traits, so
Yeah,
that we actually have a diverse level of different characteristics within the team that enables us to be functional as a whole team because we're going to be dealing with customers that are going to be on a whole gamut of different characteristics and personality types that we need to be almost chameleon-like for. But you never want to be generating a one-dimensional team because you'll be one thing to one customer archetype.
sure, sure, exactly. And at a certain level of scale, that doesn't work anymore, and you need to
Mm.
diversify.
Yeah.
So, fully agree.
So the other thing that's popped into my head is training. So I also I mean I do sales training. I run workshops for big businesses and mid-sized businesses as well. And it's interesting how many sales leaders bring in somebody like me to do a training course and they think, well, 1 or 2 day training course on insight selling or complex sales or consultative sales is going to fix the issue. Um, the work that you're sitting there smiling, mate, and you look like you've eaten a banana sideways. The smile is so big. I suspect you've had similar experiences.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm listening. I'm listening to the rest of your question. I'm ready for it.
Well, because you had such a big smile, I'm thinking I've forgotten what the question was. No, it
Oh,
was the sales training and thinking, okay, we want our sales reps to improve conversion rates.
yeah.
Um, and we think, well, it's the way that we're closing, it's the things that we say. The work that have done and the work that you're doing today, how important is it to train the sales reps and the sales leaders in the right method before we delve into some of the unconscious habits that great ones do? What's your view on sales training and when you go into an organization who are looking for some help, what's the first thing you talk about in relation to any sort of training?
That's a great question because it's that there's so many different ways that I could take this response because it honestly depends on the organization.
Well, it
And let
does,
me tell
yeah.
you what I mean, right? So it's like the it's very dangerous to come into an organization and say, I'm going to completely reconstruct the way that your sales team sells, because then there might be like a down period of a month, 2 months, 3 months, or six, where their salespeople like are completely lost and trying to figure themselves out, right? Because when has anything good ever been built without tearing something else down entirely, right? So that's a little bit dangerous to do. The the bigger the organization is, right? And it's like it's tough because like sometimes the biggest organizations are actually the most risk averse and they're very like protective over their sales process,
Yeah.
but yet they'll be the first to be like, so what's the new method that's going to work now? Is it going to be gap selling? Is it going to be med pick, right? Whatever. But here's the thing, none of those actually solve the core problem of like who the salesperson actually is as a human being. And what I mean by that is not like you have the wrong reps, it's that it's very possible that your reps are thinking about sales in an outdated way, or they might have
Mm.
their own limiting beliefs that are stopping them from serving the amount of people via converting them into deals as they could be, right? And so part of sales training is understanding like what are the mindsets and the beliefs that the salespeople are even going into the conversations with. What is the energy that they're carrying into those conversations? That's why founders do so much better than their sales team because they
Yes.
already have conviction. They know their shit works, right?
Mm.
So how do we actually extract that sort of conviction and those sorts of instincts, let's call it, the I've done this before, and translate that to the rest of the team? And you'll see the same thing in like a top rep in a company, right? Let's say there's a 10-person sales team, let's call it 20-person sales team. One or two reps are always going to carry the quota, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so business, here's what businesses think. They think that the solution is to just standardize observable behaviors. Follow this line in the script. Uh,
Mm.
say these objection handlers. Answer this question in this way. Send a follow-up in this kind of format. But then little do they know that their top reps might not even be doing that. They might be operating on a whole different OS, right? And
Yeah.
typically is built around certain things like conviction, but also around certain pattern recognition and how their buyers make decisions. And once you can reverse engineer that, now you have something to train your team on. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing gap selling or med pick or rapid close method, doesn't matter, right? Like as long as they can actually listen to what their prospects are saying and follow how they make decisions.
Well, and the thing I was going to say there is that if you have two sales reps that effectively, at least from an objective observer, is saying the same thing,
Yeah.
one's getting a great result and the other's not, right? And
Yeah.
you can have a sales manager or a chief revenue officer sitting there thinking, They're doing the same thing. How come Johnny over here is smashing it and Sally is really struggling? Well, it's all the things you can't necessarily see. It's the one percenters that I call. It's the energy, as you referred to, that they bring. It's the belief system they have. So that comes through in the words they say because it's how they say it. It's not what they say that creates a feeling or something in the buyer's mind that prompts them to want to move forward. The other thing,
Exactly.
yeah, go. Sorry, you're going to say something?
Yeah, well, so it's also how they sense hesitation in their buyer and how they slow down when they sense it.
Yeah,
That's very important, right? Because many reps just bulldoze through it, right?
yeah,
Oh, I followed the script, I followed the process, but then you wonder why the deal didn't go through.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And so when you think about that, and you mentioned before, sales of founders are probably the best salespeople because they own the product, they design the product, they create it, that's their like their baby. When you're working with organizations, how much of the work that you do is focused on the buyer psychology and understanding how the buyers make their decisions? Because a lot of sales training is not necessarily geared around that. It's geared around the product that we sell and how to sell it, not necessarily enough time spent on what's going to make the customer want to lean in and make a purchasing decision.
yeah. So, the crazy thing is that like it doesn't it matters way less about like how do we sell our product versus like how do we sell it in a way that actually caters to what the prospect wants and needs. Because it's crazy, man. Without any sort of process, without any sort of preset questions, you can run through an entire sales call just by listening to what the prospect is saying and curating the solution around that, and you'll close way more deals than just following the process and not actually listening. It's crazy how that works. That's why, again, that's why a lot of founders like they don't really follow a process necessarily, but they get deals in the door because they've either built the solution in a way that solves the customer's problems, or they're handling the sales calls in a way that solves the problems.
Yeah. Which then begs a question, how do we duplicate that? How do we, how do we actually, because what we're trying to talk about here is how do we almost systemize so that a sales leader, an organization listening to something like this can say, we're not getting the results we want. Why not? What is it that our top reps are doing that our mid-tier reps and our lower reps are not doing because they've got the same opportunity? They've got the same access to the same CRM system and the sales methodology, but what is it that makes these people elite?
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, it's in the way that they listen. It's in the way that they listen. And so, how do you teach listening to someone? It's tough, but it gets a lot easier if you can already source and screen the candidates that innately have that skill. So let me give you the best example. So in a sales team that I was scaling very recently, actually, we boiled it down to like the way that we know with like 90% certainty whether a hire is going to work out or not is if in the role play that we did with them when we were hiring them, if they had me as the mock prospect make a case for why I need this product. If they can innately do that without like training, they're going to have potential to ramp really well with this business, right? So it's about looking for certain skills and certain characteristics when you're hiring. And then if you already have a sales team and you're trying to put this into place with them, it's really about um understanding like what parts of what their prospects are saying they're completely ignoring and listening to calls with them directly and being like, why didn't you stop here? Like, why
Mm,
did you take this path instead of that path?
yeah,
Right. So, as an example, if you're talking to a prospect that is trying to scale their e-commerce store, let's call it, and maybe you are selling a TikTok shop marketing service, you're talking to a prospect that's trying to scale their e-commerce store. And so they say, hey, like I've tried everything but the one thing that I haven't tried is I haven't tried X, right? And so a normal salesperson would not stop there. They'd continue with the script. An
yeah,
exceptional salesperson would be like, well, why not try X then?
yeah.
Right? So that's just an example of like, instead of looking at the script in front of you, listen to what they're telling you and just ask that. And so the more that you can train that with your sales team, the more likely they are to do it. And if someone's not doing it, well, they're out, they're fired. Simple as that.
And what I'm hearing there, Mitch, is that okay, scripting. We'll talk about scripting in a second. You can follow the playbook, you can follow the script, but if you're not listening, you're going to miss potential signals. And what I love
Exactly.
about exceptional salespeople is they have this ability to say no or create a bit of friction with the customer where they're literally saying to the customer, I don't think this product or this service or this solution is a good fit for you, and here's
Oh yeah.
why.
Oh
And they
yeah.
do it legitimately. This is not a sales tactic. They are truly there to serve because ethical sales is about how do I actually provide a solution that's going to solve a problem that the
Yeah.
customer said they want to solve and they need to solve. And if I don't believe I've got that, then I'm going to tell them. And then it's funny how many customers turn around and say, no, 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 I want this. And they start to build out what you call that innate reason to buy and they lean in, right? And more cases than not, they end up buying.
Exactly. It's the push-pull of life, man. It works in sales, it works in dating, it works everywhere.
Yeah. So for you to then say, hey, I've done everything except X, and the salesperson to say, because the solution that we were going to sell them might be Y,
Yeah.
then you go, well, why haven't you done X then?
Exactly.
Maybe give X a crack.
Bingo. Bingo. And so many salespeople are afraid to go there because they have
Mm,
the scarcity of like, well, what if the prospect says, yeah, maybe I should do X. Well, great. Then why would I stand in the way of them trying X? I'm doing them a disservice if I don't tell them about X. You know what I
totally.
mean?
Totally.
Let them try X, and then when it doesn't work, they'll come to me and pay me more money. Right?
That's it.
Like, you
That's
know?
it. And I think I love your thoughts on this. My take on it is a lot of sales people have this belief that there's only a finite number of customers or potential customers available to them. And sometimes that might be because they've got a territory that's kind of ring fenced. They've only got
Yeah.
one or two pages of the yellow pages. That's showing my age. And they think, man, I've got a live customer. I've got to convert them, right? Versus, no, 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 no. There's an infinite number of customers out there. Your job is to qualify them in, and a lot of the times to qualify them out. And if you do
Yeah.
that in such a way, they will leave that conversation with an impression of increase to the point where, Mitch didn't try to sell me. He didn't try to close me. He actually suggested go and do this. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I've never experienced that before. They will
Yeah.
remember that.
Exactly. Exactly. And look, if the salesperson feels like true actual scarcity where there's only a finite amount of people that they could hit, then they should probably go sell something else that doesn't have that level of scarcity. So
Totally.
just my
Totally.
2 cents there. Yep.
Totally. Love
Yep.
that. Now I want to talk to you about scripting, right? And I know that in a lot of the industries that you have worked in and probably do work in now, there'll be a lot of salespeople that follow a script or a playbook. Um,
Yep.
I've got certain beliefs around that, but I'd love your overarching thoughts on this concept of playbooks or scripts.
Yeah. I like guidelines. I don't like scripts. When I say guidelines, I'm talking about make sure that you find out this info from them because it's important for us to be able to make our pitch or for us to even be able to qualify them. That's very important. Make sure that you help them understand what their pain points are. How you get there is unique based on the answers that they're giving you to your initial questions, right?
Yep.
The same thing with goals, right? So it's like if you can hit pain, goals, and the bottleneck to getting from their pain to their goals, like as long as you have that as an overarching thing, and then you have the minimum viable information that your business needs from them to determine if they're a client or not, or to determine what and how to pitch them, you're good,
Mm.
right? So that's as far as I would go with regards to scripting. I mean, I still call it a script, but it's more of a set of guidelines.
And I love that because I've actually worked in organizations where they've used the script and they've literally got these massive flow diagrams that says if the prospect says this, say that. If they say this, do that, right? And you've got a
Yeah.
salesperson that's trying to have a conversation and read a script, understand where they're at, to think about what's the next part, and it loses its authenticity.
It loses its authenticity and it untrains the salesperson from the beautiful skill of thinking on their feet and real-time perception and real-time adaptation, right? So it's like, again, if you're selling a lower level product, right? And you're hiring more entry level, junior level salespeople, then you might need something like that just to kind of get them going. And then simultaneously need to start training them in adaptive selling. But if it's a high level product and high level salespeople, you should be looking for the ability to adapt in real time, 100%.
And it's such an important point because you, as you said, you want to have some guidelines. You want to have some key overriding principles. And my belief is you want to keep it as simple as possible and think
Yes.
about what is the purpose for which we are here. Are we
Yeah,
here to flog a product to make it profitable, or are we here to actually create a solution for a customer to solve a problem?
I love it. I love it. I love solving problems, man. And I love when people do the same.
As I'm just having a sneezing fit.
That's important. That's important. Yeah, see?
And for those of
Important.
you listening to this, I had to put myself on mute. I was just about to sneeze.
There you go.
So, um, so I love that. So playbooks really are guideposts because again, if people are focusing too much on, you've got to say this, you've got to use this language, you've got to create the assumptive close or the trial close at this particular point, it takes away the ability for the sales rep to think on their feet, but also, as you mentioned before, to actively listen to what's going on because it's often what's not being said or the inflection in the voice that gives you the clues as to what perhaps needs to happen next. And I heard this from a colleague of mine in New Zealand. It says our job as sales leaders and as sales professionals is to literally become the buyer's assistant, not to become the salesperson. So how do we assist the buyer to make a decision that they're going to be happy with after the transaction or after the agreement?
I love it. I love it. And I think that also points to like what a lot of salespeople do is like they will just give a super long, drawn out presentation on like why the prospect should buy without taking into account any of the reasons why the prospect actually has for buying. So it's like the main principle is like if you actually listen hard enough, the prospect will tell you exactly how they want to be sold,
Mm,
right? And you can just do that, right? But I do like the buyer's assistant frame. I in my coaching program, the way that I used to talk about it was in the beginning of the call, like in terms of like the discovery and the pitch, it was more like the doctor analogy, right?
yeah,
So you're trying to figure out what's wrong, what are the symptoms, and what's the root cause, and then kind of giving the prescription. And then like once it's time to collect the money, you're more like a cashier, right? Because
yeah,
like cashiers don't stumble when they tell you how much it's going to be. They don't like freak out when you tell them you left your card in your car or you have to go talk to your other. Okay,
yeah.
cool, right? So it like it's interesting. There's like different hats that need to be put on at different parts of the sales process.
And I think the important point, because if you as a salesperson can detach from the outcome, and that
Yeah,
is whether this customer ends up buying or not, whatever, right? My
exactly.
job is here to actually help them make a decision that's going to help them solve what they believe is a problem that needs to be solved. And if I do that, then the natural consequence will be they'll make a purchasing decision. If
That's right.
not, then there's hundreds of others that I can talk to. That's okay, right? But it's not, but equally, and I love your thoughts on this, equally, there comes a time when you may have to challenge a particular customer
Oh, of
where
course.
they throw the, oh, I need to think about this, or I'm not quite sure. Well, say, okay, let's just retrack a little bit. You've told me that this is a problem, this is costing you this, and you need to do this for this particular reason. Has that changed?
I love it. I love it. And that all, Darren, starts with having the a very similar outcome independence, but now the outcome independence around I don't care if the prospect curses me out and hangs up the call, right?
Yeah,
Because it's like most salespeople, they fear confrontation because they're like, oh, like what if but what if what? What's the worst that could happen? They're not gonna like climb out of the computer and punch you in the face. Worst case, they'll hang up, right? Like, of course, you need to be respectful. You need to protect the reputation of the brand of the company that you're representing. But again, back to the whole disservice thing, you're doing them a disservice if you don't call them out on something that they're contradicting themselves in.
correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Because as you said, and I love the analogy you use of the doctor, and I use that quite often, that if you go to a doctor, a person who goes into a doctor sees the doctor as a specialist. Now, that could be a general practitioner, it could be an osteopath, physiotherapist, a heart specialist, right? They are the person, and they don't say, so what would you like to buy today? I've got this sale of pharmaceuticals. We've got a deal this week. How about you? They're going to say, tell me what the problem is so I can diagnose it because I'm here to help you with a solution because you have quote unquote pain, right? It could be physical or
Yeah,
mental pain.
of
And
course.
the thing is, and I think it comes back to then how salespeople and sales leaders see themselves in the whole ecosystem of the world. Are we practitioners that diagnose, or are we people who are trying to flog services and products that the world does not want? Now, that
Yeah.
answer often dictates how successful or not a sales team is going to be.
100%, 100%. I really don't really have much more to add on top of that because you absolutely nailed it, and that's very similar to how I look at it, Darren.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, so it'd be remiss of me not to ask a question of 2026 with all the stuff that's going on, and we've come out of COVID and other things are happening. There's wars in the world, all sorts of stuff going on. How do you see the world of sales? Are you still filled with enthusiasm? Are there some things where we need to be conscious of? How are you seeing the future in relation to sales, particularly in the B2B and often sometimes in the B2C space as well?
Yeah, it's funny because I made a post yesterday on Facebook saying that like 99% of the world still sells in the beginning of the call, they talk about the weather in Oklahoma, and then they'll ask three random discovery questions that don't tie to one another. Then they'll do their 30, 45-minute long pitch, just bulldozing through the prospect. Then the prospect says they got to think about it. They say, okay, and then they get ghosted, right? That's how 99% of the world still sells. So I think that the opportunity is still massively ripe and green to really change the way that the world sells, and we're just getting started here. So I think yeah, I think that there's lots of hope. The outlook is good. The
Man, I
outlook,
love that, Mitch, and you're a man after my own heart because I often give sales teams the challenge that over the next week, whether they're telephone sales or face-to-face sales account management, for every meeting they have in the next week, they are not allowed to talk about their product or their service.
dude, I love it. Sometimes I advise my sales teams and even myself and businesses that I work with to like not even do a pitch at all and just once they ask their discovery questions, say, all right, cool. What questions do you have for me?
Yeah,
Right now, and I find that that builds so much more character and so much more skill for the parts of the conversation that matters more, like the
mm.
discovery, right? Than just bulldozing someone with, 30 to 45 minutes about why their product is awesome.
Because the thing is, people don't care. They actually
Exactly.
don't care.
They're not even listening. They're not even listening.
No. Because what
100%.
they're thinking about, and if they've been experiencing the old sales methodology that we ask these questions, we build rapport, we identify the needs, we then pitch, and then we close. Customers know it's coming. They know the close is coming. So if you do something completely different, they don't expect it, and it feels more natural. It doesn't feel like a sales conversation. We're having a conversation. We're building connections. I've got a problem. I'm diagnosing. Hey, next step. What's the? Do you
Yep.
have any problem? Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah.
No. Okay, cool. So what's your credit card number?
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I'll tell you this, man. So, like something that I think the viewers, listeners might find interesting. I've been messing around with a new call process. When I say messing around, that's a little bit of an understatement. This is the process that actually scaled the last sales team that we built to over 1 million a month. Where on the initial call, we would actually just give like a high level overview of of how the service works, and then we would drop the pricing as well, but we wouldn't like ask them for their money on that call. We would say,
Yeah.
hey, like to even have the opportunity to pay us for the service, you actually have to book a consultation, right? And so they would book a consultation call, and then on that next call, we would dive a little bit deeper and like really, really tailor it to them. And then collect payment on that call. But what made them show up to the next call was they put down a refundable deposit on the first
Right.
call. And
There you
so
go.
at the end of the second call, it's not, hey, what's your credit card number? It's what's the best card to, no. Let me backtrack. It's not what's your credit card number. It's, do you want to just use the same card that you put down on the first call?
Yeah.
Even less friction,
Yeah.
right? And they've
Because it is,
already
yeah.
spent money with you. They've already spent money with you, so they're more likely to spend more. Again, got to do this ethically. Product
Yeah.
has to make sense for them, right? Can't be a pressure sale, but this is how you smooth out that kind of like last little bit of friction. So I just gave away free sauce for all the listeners.
Well, I think that's it's a great strategy, and there's more and more people now also asking for payments, albeit small payments, to attend like webinars, right? There's a
Yep.
97 because there's a massive drop off rate where free webinars, free trainings, like a 10% show up rate, if not less sometimes, right? So to do that, it says, hey, it's a refundable deposit, but in order to get access to our full service, we have to have a consultation to see. Essentially, what we're saying is to see
Yeah.
whether you qualify, because we're not sure that you qualify quite yet.
Exactly. And it's the same way that many professional service providers charge for their consultations, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have lawyers and you have financial institutions and so on and
yeah,
so forth, right? So yeah, it worked really well for that team. And I advised several other founders and sales teams to do it. And so far the results are great as long as the avatar of the prospect is either B2B or B to sophisticated C, kind of like over
yeah.
6 figure year earner type of
Yeah,
thing.
and it's a great qualification tool because it actually separates the people who are just tire kicking information gathering from those who have a real problem that they're really wanting to solve and get a solution for.
That's
So
right.
it's that's really cool. So mate, hey, it's been a great conversation. We're nearly on the hour, and I know you've got time to do other things tonight in Miami. Um, is there anything that we haven't covered that's top of mind that you wish I had have asked you in relation to selling, closing, psychology?
Man, if there's something else, I'll message you back and we'll just hop on to a
We'll
podcast.
do we'll do an addition. We'll do an addendum to this.
Yep, yep,
No, that's
yep.
cool. Hey, it's been a great conversation, Mitch. Thank you so much for adding so much value, and I'm sure the listeners are going to get huge amounts of gold out of what you've shared. For people who wanted to connect with you, learn more about you, and what you guys are doing at revsignals.io, where's the best place for them to go?
Okay, the two best places. Number one, revsignals.io. That is revsignals.io. That's the website. They can go ahead and learn more and book a call, or they can follow me on Instagram. I'm just Mitch Sapoff on Instagram.
Have you got a blue tick?
Of course. Come on. I'm official, man.
You are, mate. You are. And you said before you do use, well, you sparingly use LinkedIn, so I won't put LinkedIn on there. Well, I might because people who listen to this, they very much into LinkedIn, so you might have some more LinkedIn followers coming your way as well, mate.
Perfect, perfect. Always good to beef up the LinkedIn following.
Love it, love it. Mitch, a man after my own heart, because your first name is the same as my last name, even though you just shortened it to Mitch.
Sure.
It's been an absolute pleasure, mate, having you on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darren, for having me, and we'll talk soon.
We will.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.